It's hard to believe that Kathleen Kennedy and Leslye Headland could be any worse at driving Star Wars than we already knew. And yet, it's coming true. We know now why Disney apparently had to can both of them and kick them to the curb when it comes to controlling a galaxy far, far away. What if we told you the grand plan seems to have been make Yoda a bad guy, and all of the Jedi as well? Turns out that wasn't so swell with those who wanted to, keep making money. Folks, it's not funny just how bad Kathleen Kennedy was, and Leslye Headland too. Can you imagine turning the Jedi into the villains of Star Wars, completely inverting what George Lucas set out to do? Well, that's the plan we're finding out was the Acolyte, and it's just all right with us that Disney decided to finally stop the bleeding. Folks, you can send this to the stars, click the like button, and subscribe. And if you'd like to join the community dialogue down below, we invite you to do so. We love hearing from you. And now let's dive in. Big conversation. Lorne, Marvin, me, right now. Folks, I have a story that's going to make you be a little bit more sober today. Leslye Headland says that it's canon that our good friend Yoda, Jedi Master Yoda, well, he's an accomplice to the Acolyte. Leslye Headland claims Yoda helped cover up murder in the Acolyte. And I guess this makes it canon, right? Lauren, let's read about it and I'll get your thoughts on it. A new controversy is brewing, by the way. Geeks and Gamers, Marvin Montenaro, he's on the panel. Here we go. A new controversy is brewing after Leslye Headland suggested that Yoda would have played a far more morally questionable role had the Acolyte continued, and it's only adding fuel to the fire surrounding the canceled Disney Plus series. In a recent interview highlighted by the Holophiles, the Acolyte creator was asked about the show's closing moments, which feature Vernestra Roy, also known as Nepotism Incarnate, moving to conceal Kamir's crimes, also known as Emo Rin. Headland didn't hedge when discussing where that storyline might have gone. For sure, yeah, she said. When asked whether Yoda would have helped with the cover-up, don't come at me in the comments because he does it in Clone Wars, so I don't want to hear about it. It's the kind of comment that immediately raises eyebrows among longtime Star Wars fans, especially those already frustrated with how the Jedi have been portrayed in recent years. Lauren, it's no surprise to me that Leslye Headland had to go. The Acolyte, Disney said nope, and even Kathleen Kennedy, thrown no rope after this series was declined and canceled. Lauren, they were going to turn Yoda into a lawbreaker. They already screwed it up so badly in the sequel trilogy and more. What do you make of this idea? Are you a fan? Are you a hater when it comes to what they were going to do with Yoda, changing his character perhaps into that of a murder cover-up kind of guy?
So I'm going to have probably a surprising take on this.
You love Leslye Headland and you hope she gets a season 2.
Yeah, you've got the same writer as Marvin. He said the same thing. We talked about this morning. First of all, I would say it's not canon because that which is not produced cannot be canon. What she's doing here is she's saying what in her mind would or might have happened in a season 2 which never occurred. And as Marvin and our discussion went this morning, I think that our supposition was that Vernestra was going to lie about what happened so that Yoda was deceived as opposed to being complicit in whatever cover-up occurred. However, I actually support Leslie's position here because, in my opinion, if I were to accept the Acolyte, the Yoda of the prequel era is a much different person than the Yoda of the original trilogy era. And she is technically correct that Yoda did participate in a cover-up, which involved the knowledge of how the creation of the clone army came about, as well as the murder of Sifo Dyas. And he did that because they were worried about, first of all, tipping off a potential Sith Lord in the Senate. And secondly, they were at the climax of a war, and the war was ongoing, and trying to stop operations in the middle of a war would have been difficult to say the least. But I do think that the fall of the Jedi Order largely rests on Yoda's shoulders because of his pride and hubris. And that's what the prequel era taught Yoda, was humility. I actually think there's an irony in that episode 2, Yoda is lecturing Ben, Obi-Wan, and Mace about how all of the Jedi now are prideful, and he's the greatest example of that. He knows that their ability to glean the future has been diminished, that their foresight isn't working as it should. They know that the Sith Lord is out there. They've even been pretty heavily tipped off about who he is, and they're obviously suspicious of Palpatine, yet they take no action. They continue to sit on their hands. They continue to think, we know what's best. And because of that, they're destroyed.
All right, you've convinced me, Lauren. We're going to skip. We're going to leave Leslye alone for a minute. Hang on, Marv. I'll get you. Well, go ahead.
Lauren's wrong. Look, at the end of the day, when the issue that Lauren is citing, where they did the cover up, they found out 3 years into the Clone Wars that the Clone Army was created by Dooku. What are you supposed to do then 3 years into a galactic war with mass casualties along dozens of worlds? Are you supposed to just give up your army? Supposed to just stop? You're supposed to go to the Senate that you have been told is under the influence of your enemies as well? Like, the Jedi need to look into this, and so they're holding back the information while they look into it. That is much different than we're going to cover up the murder of about a dozen Jedi, during peacetime. And also, it raises the question of, if Yoda knows that a guy with a red lightsaber, turned a bunch of Jedi Knights and Masters single-handedly into shish kebab, why is he sitting there being like, there's no such thing as the Sith in Episode 1 when Qui-Gon comes to them about Darth Maul? He should know that, there are these powerful dark Force users out there.
Well, the argument could be made, because Marvin is wrong, that if Yoda did cover up that event, that he's just still engaging in the same cover-up. He doesn't want to admit that he was wrong and that the Sith are out there. And this is the problem that the Jedi have in this era, is that they are willfully blind. They don't want to believe that the Sith exist, and they keep denying that the Sith exist. They sort of have to tacitly admit it after the encounter with Maul, because what else are you going to do? But to counter your point, yes, you're talking about the end of the Clone Wars. I'm talking about the beginning, before the Clone Wars have begun. Dooku straight up tells Obi-Wan that the Senate is now under the control of a Sith Lord.
Yeah, but they don't believe him.
Okay.
That's not lying. Yoda literally says he's lying.
Yes, he does, but it's still an example of being willfully blind. You have got... You know that that's there. You can doubt it in the moment, but as evidence continues to mount, the war is not going well. You have Dooku, who has told you that the Senate's under the control of a Sith Lord. You have now rescued the Chancellor, in which Dooku was executed, so your one line of possible confirmation is now dead. You know that Sifo Dyas was murdered. You know that the Clone Army was commissioned by Dooku before he died, and that there was a cover-up involving Sifo Dyas. All of those things point to, hey, Dooku was at the center of all of this, and he was in pretty close proximity to Palpatine and ended up dead. Maybe we should be asking some questions about these clones. And that's before you consider the fact that Five's Order 66 activation occurred prematurely, which is another giant red flag.
Wait a minute. Calm down. I got to ask you a question here. Let me get into this nerd talk for a second. Now, let's step away from Leslye, okay? We can all agree she's a moron. We can all agree that we know why this was going to go to a bad place. They couldn't have explicitly Yoda be part of a murder cover-up, so Disney said no. Because Yoda still sells merch, all right? Lauren, was George Lucas wrong in the way that he presented Yoda in the prequels? Should he have rethought that, and should Yoda have been more of a pristine character? Or do you agree with Yoda having been more of a gray guy in the prequel trilogy?
I don't see him as gray. I see him as wrong. I think that he's emblematic of the Jedi as a whole in the prequel era. In the way that things are structured, the Jedi had been declining at this point for centuries. And there's a little bit of forgotten knowledge, things that they have forgotten about, which includes the ability to maintain their identity after death. They have completely forgotten that at one point that was a thing that they could do. So I just see them as being in decline, but thinking of themselves as being the apex civilization, that they think of themselves as being the best that ever could be. If they didn't, you wouldn't have something like Jocasta News saying that if it doesn't exist in our archives, then it does not exist. Every time you see the Jedi in the prequel era, pride is the overwhelming message that's there. And I think that contrast is important, because you see Yoda, at the height of his hubris, just cannot conceive of the fact that they have totally missed this. Yoda in the original trilogy has been humbled. He's still prideful enough, though, that he hangs on to some things. The thing that he and Obi-Wan never get is that they think that they have to kill Vader. They don't understand that maybe confronting Vader doesn't mean what they think it means. because Luke doesn't have that preconception. He's able to reach Anakin inside Vader. That's why his new Jedi Order will be important, is that he's letting go of the dogmatic things that had led the Jedi to this point of pride, and understanding that, yes, we are flawed, but trying to rid ourselves of attachments is not what's going to fix that problem. That's only going to create bigger problems that we have to deal with.
Marvin is the author of this article, and hearing this dissertation from Lauren. I mean, this is the stuff that makes Lucasfilm workers cry, because they think I have no chance. Pablo Hidalgo somewhere right now is in the fetal position listening to this. Marv, what say you when it comes to how this was going to go forward with Leslye? Was this something you think rose to the level that even Disney said, oh my, this can happen?
Leslye very clearly in The Acolyte, and I think Lauren will agree with me on this, Leslye saw the Jedi as the villains.
Yes.
And the Jedis were 100% the villains of this. And she was going to take that villainy and put it into Yoda. She was going to make, while Yoda may have done some morally great things during the war, I think it's a lot worse if you have him doing it during peacetime, you know, instituting cover-ups. Vernestra, the Jedi Master Leslye Headland's wife, I mean, she is a straight-up villain. And you know, you have these 4 or 5 Jedi, however many there were, that went to that planet, who, you know, are at the root of everything. They portray Jedi Master Squid Games as essentially the obstacle that must be destroyed, and the Sith are the good guys. It is an absolute violation of the black and white universe that George created.
So can I offer a counterpoint?
From the Leslye Headland fan club? Sure.
I actually don't think that Leslye would disagree with you that Vernestra is a villain. But I think that her point is that all of the Jedi are villains, and
yes,
that the Jedi being eliminated is probably a better situation. Her point of view character is the senator that wants to investigate the Jedi. That's her thesis. And so I think that mine is that the Jedi are intended to be the protectors of peace and justice in the Old Republic. They had strayed from their mission because they stopped listening to the Force and saw themselves as an enforcement arm of the Senate. That's where the Jedi went astray.
Can I offer a counterpoint? I don't think Disney cared one iota about any of that. They probably loved it until somebody figured out, dang, if the Jedi are all bad guys, that's going to cost us a lot of money real fast. Helping Hollywood produce a product that you want to consume, that's what we do each and every day, folks. And this time, it's time to, well, say goodbye. We know, but don't cry. No, for we will have more videos on the way. We love to bring those videos and that information. And by the way, if you'd like even more, consider going to the Patreon page. It's www.patreon.com/WDW Pro. It's where we put out stuff exclusively there that we simply can't put out and other places for whatever reason, be it because it's too spicy or because, well, perhaps we're working to corroborate it. But you can find out things early and first over there. Folks, we surely have had a great time spending time with you. Consider clicking that like button, share, subscribe, click it, and stick it to those pesky algorithms. It is the notification bell, and drop a comment right on down below. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.